What is up, guys? Coming back at you with another video, and I wanted to go through some guide tips that I have. For those of you that don't know, I spent most of my summer, if not all of it, and I'm kidding a lot of you, I spent all of my summer guiding on a private ranch in Colorado. I think I got maybe 1 week off, um, all the way up to October, but while most guides do not have access to the private water that I did, I still do think there's some valuable lessons that I learned this summer when it comes to guiding. Now, don't get me wrong, I do not think I have any tips in here for expert guides or seasoned guides. Maybe I do, but I personally don't think so. I'm nowhere near close to being expert on the topic, but anyone looking to get into the guiding business specifically for fly fishing or just beginner guides out there, maybe you can learn from this. And so I thought I'd share. So the first thing is know your water. And that probably seems like very obvious advice, but it's also probably the most important piece of advice, in my opinion. On the ranch, we had somewhere between like 11 ponds, plus we had the main river, which went for like over 10 miles. And then we had 4 or 5 side channels. I can't specifically remember, but it became important to kind of know what was going to fish well when and what kind of anglers we were taking out. If we were taking out a newer angler, we'd obviously want to take him to a spot that, maybe doesn't have the biggest of fish, but it has a lot of fish. They're pretty readily able to feed or catch the fish. They're not that hard to catch and stuff like that. Maybe going to a pond if you need to practice casting, if they're not the best caster in the world, kind of stuff like that. And knowing, if someone was like, hey, I want to, see more wildlife, we go here, and I want to catch a big fish, we go here. Just knowing those spots and knowing where you can take your angler to be the most successful. And that's on a private ranch, but I would imagine, I can't say for certain because I haven't quite done it, but guiding on public water, I'm sure it's way more important to know your water than it is on private land. Just because you have to know what the best spots to go to are, you have to manage water levels. I was on one river with ponds, so I was stuck to that system. But if you get a rain event, a snow event, or it's a holiday weekend and this creek's going to be extra busy because it's so close to the city, you need to find spots where you can take your client, your guest, and be successful. And if the water's bad here, hey, we can go here and the water will be all right. It'll be fishable. Even for a beginner, we can get on some fish and this, and we have an opportunity to learn. So know your water. So the next one is communication. So tip number 2 is communication. And I think communication is probably important for any and every position everywhere, even probably relationships and stuff like that. But with social media and with word of mouth, I think people often get a misrepresentation and unrealistic expectations of how a day trip fly fishing is going to be. And I feel like oftentimes people think it's really easy, and don't get me wrong, sometimes it can be very easy. But let's be honest, sometimes conditions are just terrible. So communicating with your guests, what the expectations are from the day, communicating, seeing what kind of their level of experiences is, and setting their expectations based on, you know, from what they explain to you, their experiences is this or that. And also, I think communication, I personally like to, when I'm rigging, when I'm doing this, when we're fishing, and, I'm explaining to them what I'm doing. I'm tying this nymph on for this reason, this nymph for this. This one's an attractor. This one's probably the one they're going to eat. I want to change my depth here. If we're not getting so many bites, maybe I lower the depth, increase it, add a weight, and just tell them, hey, we're doing this. And that to me is the best way to teach an angler, in my opinion. I don't know everyone's intention for going fishing, but if they ever do want to just go fishing by themselves and not have to pay for a guide or doing of that, it's nice to give them some background stuff so that they can fish by themselves. Or God forbid I need to step away, or maybe I'm guiding 2 or 3 people and I need to step away, they can still manage on their own based on what I said and yada yada. And also, fishing is fishing, and it's not always easy to put fish in the net, especially on a private ranch. Uh, Not especially on a private ranch, but even on a private ranch, it can be hard sometimes. Let's face it. And so I like to explain my changes, in my explanation. In my mind, this is me kind of showing them that, I'm doing my job, that I'm working, that I want to see them be successful because I'm making these changes. I'm just not going to say this is a bad day and, we're not going to catch fish. I manage those expectations, but I also go out there and I give my best effort. I make adjustments when I need to, when I try everything I can. I do my best in that time that I have. Try to get them on the fish and show them that I'm working to help them be successful. So that's tip number 2, communicate. And then third is to entertain. And there's that old cliche, fishing is not all about catching fish. That's why it's not called catching, which we all roll our eyes at. I just did in my head. But it's true. And, not everybody's out there to catch a bunch of fish. I personally, when I go out to fish, I'm trying to catch as many as possible, learn new tactics, so I can translate most of that stuff into competition. And when I'm guiding too, I often get caught up in trying to catch fish. And not everybody's out there to catch fish. Some people are just trying to get out there and be outside, spend some time with family, or, get some sort of stress relief and just talk to somebody new, or just be quiet in nature and enjoy the peaceful flow of the river. Fly fishing and being outside is a huge stress relief for me and for other people. So it's not all about catching fish. I would say share your story. Don't brag about yourself, obviously, but I can't tell you how many times people ask me like where I was from, and then when they found out I grew up in Buffalo and I was in Colorado, how I got there, how I got that job, some of my experiences, stuff like that. Like I said, don't brag, don't overinflate yourself, but be honest, share your story, and ask them questions as well, like, hey, where are you guys from? Get to know them, so it's more like you're out there fishing with a buddy than with someone like a customer. And it makes for some enjoyable day on the water when you're able to rag on each other, make jokes, and crack back and forth just like you are with your old buddies. Maybe a little bit cleaner than you would with your buddies back home or that you normally fish with, but just as fun. And lastly, tip 4, rely on experience. Rely on your past experience. I think that goes with almost anything, and with fishing and guiding in general. Chances are, if you're guiding, it's not the first time that you've ever picked up a fly rod. So use what you've learned over your years on the water. Oftentimes, whether I'm fishing or whether I'm guiding, I often see a water or water type and say, hey, this is a lot like when I fished there. And fishing wise, the biggest thing I can remember is, I caught a nice trout on the West Branch of the Delaware. And then I was fishing Big Fishing Creek in Pennsylvania, and I was like, hey, like this really looked like that spot on the Delaware where I caught this fish. You put that into practice. Maybe you catch some fish, maybe you don't. But if you don't, it's a starting point, and then you work through your progressions, you make your adjustments. Rely on that experience. This has worked in the past, so you start there. And then if that doesn't work, this has worked, try that, and that, you adapt, you learn, and then you fish on. And so those are my tips. Know your water, communicate, entertain, and rely on past experience. Nothing groundbreaking here, but definitely some stuff that I learned over the summer that was important, and something like entertaining, I think that makes sense. I think I knew that going in, but I was pleasantly surprised how many people actually cared to know, kind of my story and where I had come from and stuff like that. So I learned a lot this summer. It wasn't the easiest summer by any means, but I definitely learned a lot. And hopefully I'll be out there guiding this coming season, and we'll see where it goes. But we'll see you in the next video. If you did enjoy this, please leave a like, subscribe, all that stuff. Tight lines, and we'll see you in the next one.